All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, hello everyone. On behalf of the SMPTE Hollywood section and the 8K Association, we'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us here tonight at the Culver Theater. It is great to see such a strong turnout of professionals and colleagues from across the media and entertainment community here tonight. For those of you that I haven't met as of yet, my name is Juan Reyes. I am the chair of the SMPTE Hollywood section and the executive director of the 8K Association. Wearing many hats, I'm also the president of Tech Align Group, and again, I'm happy to be here with all of you today. Events like today are what SMPTE is all about. Our goal is to bring together industry professionals to share knowledge, to explore emerging technologies, foster meaningful conversations, and network together to help move the industry forward. We strive to make SMPTE membership both valuable and impactful for everyone involved. If you're not already a SMPTE member, I urge you to consider being one. And also, as part of the SMPTE news, they recently announced that for those of you involved in the specifications around SMPTE, that all of the specifications are available free. Previously posted specifications and any upcoming specifications. So for those of you where this is part of your wheelhouse, we're happy to announce that they are free to all members. So today's topic is a very exciting one. We always hear about emerging technologies, premium, large format viewing, and immersive entertainment experiences. 8K has been evolving in these areas for quite some time. Today, you won't just hear about the evolution of the 8K ecosystem, but you'll get to experience it firsthand and hear from some industry experts. As you can see here, in addition to myself, I have Brian Heaslip, Director of Solution Engineering from Colorfront, Greg Ciaccio, VP Post-Production Original Content and Image Capture from IMAX, and Mike Kobb, Principal Engineer User Experience from Kaleidescape. So today we've got a very exciting program, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So people often ask, where are we regarding the 8K ecosystem? If anybody needs their sunglasses right now, I know the screen is very bright. I've got some details about exactly what we've got going on here coming up soon, so stay tuned. But so what we're trying to demonstrate here is where we are around the ecosystem. And as you can see from the slide we've got up on the screen, we've got basically the end-to-end ecosystem. We have content creation, we have capture, we have editing, we have encoding, distribution, we've got decoding, integration, AV receivers, and then of course displays and projectors as well. Within that we have many major brands, we have many of the major studios, we've got cameras, we've got hardware, we've got editing tools, encoders, AVRs, and much, much more. So the end-to-end ecosystem is available from all of these various aspects. So these are very exciting times from the 8K ecosystem perspective. But before we get into more of this, I want to talk a little bit about the theater. I mean, isn't this an amazing theater? Isn't this a giant screen that you guys are looking at? Super, super bright. So I want to give thanks, first of all, to the Amazon Culver Theater and their crew for all of their support, especially Ken McCow, who is up in the projection area, who was very helpful in putting all of this together. But before we talk about the technology, I want to share a little bit of tech about this particular theater and what's going on here. We've got a lot of people here involved in technology, so of course it makes sense to kind of geek out and talk a little bit about those details. So this particular theater, what you're looking at is an 8K screen. The display itself is 10 meters wide. Those who are metrically challenged, that equates to 30 feet. We're looking at a Samsung IWA wall with a 1.26 millimeter pitch. It has a resolution of 7680 by 4320 with a 16:9 aspect ratio. It supports BT 2020 and PQ HDR. From a signaling perspective, there's a Samsung S-Box controller with 4 HDMI inputs, which is located up in the back in the projection area, and the signal from that S-Box is being transmitted to this particular screen over fiber. Now, for those of you who are into numbers and display performance, some of the criterion information we have regarding this particular screen, it has a peak brightness that can be consistently over 800 nit for HDR PQ content, and it has a minimum brightness of about 0.008 nit. So very impressive. So who wants to order one of these for their home? I see a couple of hands up there. All right. Amazon.com. No, I'm kidding. So going back into the ecosystem, I want to start to touch on different segments of the ecosystem. And this being a SMPTE conference, I want to first focus on a SMPTE component for this. Part of it related to the SMPTE IMF specification that was recently updated to support 8K. So that kind of demonstrates a little bit about how things going on behind the scenes, around the technology, around the organizations driving and supporting and building specifications for technology are supporting 8K. And so as we talk a little bit about that support for 8K, there's equipment in here. Colorfront has some amazing technology, their transcoder technology that has been updated to support the SMPTE IMF 8K. And somebody who was involved in that work, I have Brian Heaslip. I want to go ahead and bring him up and talk a little bit about his work related to SMPTE IMF, updating it to 8K, and their transcoder product, which was been updated to also support the SMPTE 8K IMF. So Brandon, please take it away.
Evening, everybody. Again, thank you for coming. I'll keep it brief so we can get into it. So obviously the IMF application 4 for 8K cinema mezzanine is the specification. It's supported fully in transcoder for read-write verification for the delivery as you start to make those mastering files. Just as a reminder what an IMF is, I'm sure most of you should know what it is at this point, but it's the interoperable master format. It's a component-based solution for all your mastering needs. It uses a track file for your building blocks, and then you would put things together with your CPL. So it's, single masters, and then you're able to piece everything together to make all your different versions, all your different edits, all your different deliverables, all in one single contained file format in order to be, interoperable. That's the biggest key. Whether it's us or another software, we can pass them back and forth and make sure everyone is compliant to what the standard is for. For 8K, what the spec defines, as you can see, is the max resolution is 8192 by 6224. It's completely lossless, and so it uses reversible 5.3 wavelet compression for J2K. It also uses high throughput J2K, which is absolutely fantastic because it makes it about 10 times faster to encode and decode, and so it makes it a lot more usable for you for the long-term archive, mastering, playback, all of those things. The high throughput J2K has made it really a great format to use. And then it's XYZ DCDM compliant with ST428, which is the DCP compliance portion of everything. We are in a theater, so we'll talk about how it's related to the DCP world as well. But again, IMF is a very universal format. And then a bit of it, why it leapfrogs the 4K standard. Obviously, the resolution is the biggest part of it. As we continue to go into the future, everyone talks about single master workflows for, say, HDR. You're starting with the biggest version of color volume as possible. The same works for resolution. So you're shooting in higher resolution cameras. You're capturing in higher resolution. So why not archive and master in a higher resolution? And then so that specification allows you to do it. Obviously, like I've already said, it is completely lossless, which is also great, so you can come back to it later and you're not going to lose any of quality as you're working through it. I've already gone over the specification for the high throughput J2K and how that helps make it actually possible. If it wasn't for the high throughput J2K portion of it, this is a lot of a heavier lift for systems to actually play back and manage, and obviously file size. And then it also works, the beauty of it is it works in IMF, but it also is compliant with DCPs. So that's a quick overview of the specification. We can get into it more as the night goes on or afterwards. But thank you for the time. Back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Brandon. And so that's something that was completed earlier this year with several companies involved in the development of that. There's been some interoperability events to make sure that the content that's being packaged up using the IMF 8K specification is working properly. But as you know, when we're dealing with technologies, we're dealing with updates, we're dealing with specifications, we always got to look at, from a testing perspective, from an interoperability perspective, what do we need to be looking at? And so as part of that, to help, address this, the industry has collaborated to create some great test content, which sure it could be used for the 8K IMF packaging and for other areas. And so as part of that, I wanted to present to you and demonstrate the StEM2 content from ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers. And so to give you just a little bit of background on this, the ASC StEM2 Standard Evaluation Material 2 project was created by the American Society of Cinematographers Motion Imaging Technology Council. Say that 10 times fast. So they developed that to provide the industry with a neutral, professionally produced reference film and test package. It's a very small but very well produced 17-minute short film designed to really push the envelope in many, many different areas. Now, we're not going to show you the entire clip, but we're going to demonstrate a short segment here. So here is your first view at an 8K clip. I present to you the ASC StEM2 clip. Actually, hold on a sec, I missed this slide, but before we do, I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that went into preparing the clip specifically for today's event. So the clip itself was shot with camera resolutions of 12K, 8K, 6K, and 4.5K. The master resolve color correction was performed by Roundabout. As part of that, there were camera raw clips, including 4K OpenEXR VFX shots, and it was mastered using ASUS in Resolve with HDR, with an HDR 300 nit ST2084 ODT using the Samsung Onyx, the Samsung X300, and the Barco LS4K displays and projectors to make sure that everything looked uniform on all of these three different displays. And so now, as part of that, I will present to you the ASC StEM2 clip. And so there you have the, like I said, the ASC StEM2 clip, which has been used throughout the industry for, I think, a few years now for a variety of testing. Just an example of what the industry can do when they pull together to help support each other, and as part of this being used for the development and update of the SMPTE IMF specification to support 8K. And so we talked a bit about, various aspects of the 8K ecosystem. You saw a clip that demonstrated the use of, high-resolution cameras. One of the areas that I want to talk about related to content creation, it's not just the creation of new content, high-resolution content, but there's also the idea of restoration and taking classic films, remastering them for use in 8K. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. And very recently, SMPTE's held a few different events that focused on film restoration, film archive. The 8K Association has also produced several panel discussions at NAB, at CEDIA, related to restoration and high-resolution scanning. As part of that, in discussions with the studios, many of the studios are scanning content, their library high-value content in 8K and higher resolutions. The idea here, the strategy is around scan once and preserve forever. At one of the recent panels we hosted, Warner Brothers had mentioned they have over 20 titles scanned in 8K. Granted, with this, that for them, they mentioned it's not just about mastering in 8K, but it helps to produce higher quality 4K masters like they've done with Dirty Harry, like they've done with 4K. Other works that they've remastered in 4K using 8K scans include Ben-Hur, Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, and others. And then one of the things we're starting to see as well is, content being restored completely in 8K for the entire restoration workflow. So not just scanning in 8K and then doing the cleanup at 4K for a 4K deliverable, but where they're actually scanning the content in 8K. They're doing the dirt cleanup in 8K. They're doing all of the color correction in 8K. And we've seen that with some titles. You know, David Fincher is a big fan of this. He did it some time ago with Seven. And more recently, it was recently announced that he's done that with Fight Club, where he took the Fight Club, scanned it in 8K, did all of the dirt cleanup, restoration, color correction in 8K. And I think as technology advances, as you see cost and storage go down, as you see tools for some of the dirt cleanup process, especially around what's evolving with AI, that we're going to start to see more and more 8K masters develop from some of these high-value library titles. And two of them in particular that we are fortunate enough to be able to demonstrate to you today are the MGM's West Side Story and from Warner Brothers, the 2001 A Space Odyssey. So the first clip we're going to be demonstrating West Side Story. I mean, everybody knows West Side Story. We were showing it a little earlier during testing. I saw people dancing and singing the tune. So this is something that everybody loves. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and we're going to go ahead and show you MGM's West Side Story. So the next clip we want to go ahead and demonstrate is Warner Brothers 2001 A Space Odyssey. Now, before playing that, I've got some information to talk a little bit about, you know, how this particular clip came to be. The restoration for this was done back in 2018 by the Warner Brothers MPI group. It was essentially an 8K scan of their original 65 millimeter camera negative. Senior colorist Janet Wilson from Warner Brothers MPI completed the HDR grade, which was supervised by Ned Price, the VP of Restoration over there at Warner Brothers MPI. And the result of all of this was a fully restored rendering in 8K of 2001 A Space Odyssey. And the way this came to be was through an agreement with NHK Japan to release this in December 2018 as part of NHK's 8K channel launch. And as a result of this, 2001 A Space Odyssey became Warner Brothers' first catalog film title ever to be completely restored in 8K, scanning, dirt cleanup, color correction, everything. So something they're very proud of. They've not really had an opportunity to use it much, but we've been able to demonstrate it here and got some really exciting information about it a little bit later on. So with that, let's have a look at the 2001 A Space Odyssey. Another great 8K clip demonstrating what AI was like in 2001, right? But yeah, so again, going through the 8K ecosystem and talking about, you know, we were there looking at, you know, content creation and taking some great classic films, remastering them in 8K, demonstrating them on a large screen. And large screens really for consumers in the home and theaters are providing some very, you know, immersive viewing experiences. And as part of that, we're talking about, you know, the premium large format entertainment that you're seeing in theaters like this and others. So just to talk a little bit about that, there's a lot of theaters bringing premium large format entertainment for consumers to enjoy. You have AMC, you've got Regal, you've got Cinemark, B&B Theaters, Imagine Entertainment, you know, Alamo, Walt Disney Studios. And the idea here is that these are highly immersive viewing experiences that the consumers are really striving for, especially now you've got things like the Sphere, like Cosm. So consumers are wanting more resolution, more immersive experiences, and you know all of these capabilities in these large format theater experiences are designed to give that viewer a truly immersive viewing experience. And one of the leaders at the forefront of that is our good friends over at IMAX. You know, IMAX theaters have been, as you've been probably reading, shattering records around their premium, you know, large format screens and content. And this is truly providing consumers with highly immersive experiences. And as part of talking about this, I'd like to go ahead and invite Greg Ciaccio to talk a little bit about, you know, the IMAX, you know, home viewing experience, a theatrical experience, really bringing immersive viewing experiences to the consumer. So, Greg.
Hello, thank you, everyone. How are you tonight? Awesome, awesome. I'm Greg Ciaccio. I'm the VP Post-Production, Original Content, and also Image Capture. I know it's kind of an odd title, but I work over there with Bruce Margot, and we work with filmmakers all the way from pre-pro through final delivery for not only film for IMAX projects, but anything that starts on film or ends up on film. And what can I say? We've been having a great year or two. I'm going to be light on slides and have really most of it on the screen in the form of motion video. But just most of you know this already, but just to put it up there, and it's always good to see it up on a screen this big. The comparisons of different film formats, and you see starting from the very right, 4x 35, still very popular. If you follow Kodak, they haven't been busier in years. They're doing really well. All film formats. So, and also on the consumer side, people, a lot of people are actually shooting still films these days. So it's really great. We've got VistaVision or 835 next to it. 5x 70, you can count the 5 perfs. And then of course, if you take that and you triple the size of it and put it on its side, you end up with IMAX 1565 for cinematography capture and 1570, of course, for projection. So we've been kind of future-proofing for 8K for about 50 years now. All right, so I've got 3 clips to show you. It's about 5 minutes in total. Some of these are back from 92 and 94, so 32 and 34 years ago. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for those great clips, Greg. And as you can see, even material that is extremely old, the amount of information that you can capture from film using high resolution scanning can result in some really, really great 8K images. So that really helps to demonstrate just another segment of the 8K ecosystem on the content side. I was going to get into the next component of the discussion point of distribution. But before doing that, I want to talk a little bit more about native 8K. You saw from the STEM2 clip the use of high-resolution cameras to capture information at higher than 8K resolution. We were able to receive some last-minute clips shot on Red. One is from Red, and another one is from Phil Holland, a little clip called, Velocitas Machina. And the idea here is it truly demonstrates the capabilities of what you have with the high resolution 8K and higher resolution cameras today and what you can do with that. As we've been working through the 8K Association, there's been a lot of cinematographers, camera companies approaching us to say, we've been shooting in 8K for 5, 8, 10 years. We want to be able to do something with that content. And here's a demonstration of a couple clips that have been shot on Red at 8K and higher resolutions for you all to enjoy. So here we have 2 more 8K clips. So let's go ahead and play those. There we go. There we go. All right. We've got audio. We've got lighting. Fantastic. So yeah, a big thank you to Red and to Phil Holland, the director and cinematographer behind that amazing clip that you just saw. And now the segment I want to talk a little bit about as part of this 8K ecosystem is around, the distribution. One of the questions that is often asked around, 8K is where is the content? And I think tonight we were able to demonstrate a little bit about, look, here we have some content. We have content natively shot in 8K. We have content that's been shot on film, mastered and restored in 8K. So we are addressing here, as you've seen, the question of where is the content. But that still leaves another question about how do we get this content to the home? How do we distribute it to the home? And that's another part of the ecosystem that we want to go ahead and talk about. Obviously, in Japan, NHK launched their 8K channel. Well, if you live in Japan, you can get 8K in your home. We don't live in Japan here, so we don't have that opportunity. But as of today, there's some very exciting news where we do have that opportunity to where earlier this morning, our next presenter, Kaleidescape, announced the launch of their 8K movie player for the home. So with that, consumers are now able to purchase an 8K player for the home, download and view 8K content in their home. So this is a very exciting day for the 8K ecosystem, for SMPTE, for the 8K Association, and especially for Kaleidescape. And to talk a little bit more about that and talk a little bit about their product, I'd like to invite Mike Kobb to the panel here to go ahead and give us a little bit of information about Kaleidescape, about your product, and what you're doing to get distribution of 8K content to the home. So take it away, Mike.
Well, hello, everyone. We are really, really pleased to be here this evening. As Juan said, it's been a very exciting day for Kaleidescape because this morning we launched our brand new flagship player, which is the Kaleidescape Strato K. Strato K is, as Juan said, an 8K movie player. And in fact, all of the clips that we've been watching this evening have been played on this magnificent video wall on Strato K. So this is, we believe that this is now the premier highest fidelity playback device that's available to the consumer. As Juan said, we support full 8K. All of the clips that we were just watching were native 8K clips. We are also launching today an additional content format called 4K Cinematic. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, I think. But basically, this is a way for us to bridge the content story while 8K content is coming online by delivering 4K content that is pretty much as close as anyone's ever gotten to delivering what you would see on the mezzanine file, the original 4K mezzanine file, to the home. So very high bit rate and up to 444 color, which is something that does not exist on any other device that we're aware of. And of course, lossless spatial audio as well. So it's a big day for us. We're very excited to be here and talk about it. And I think with that, I will hand it back to Juan.
Thank you, Mike, and congratulations on the launch of your player today. And with that, I would like to invite all of our panelists up front to have a seat in our chairs, and we can go ahead and continue in this exciting discussion. All right, so as we get started, I think it makes sense to have each of you introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about the work you do within your organizations around the 8K ecosystem before we continue our discussion in other areas. So, Brandon, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Brandon Heaslip. I'm the Director of Solutions Engineering at Colorfront. We're one of the leading manufacturers for IMF and DCP delivery around the world. My role at the company is to help make sure that our customers are able to deliver and receive whatever format is required, whether it's an IMF or a ProRes or whatever it might be, and work with our developers in Budapest to make sure that we hit all the specifications for all the major studios and assets.
Great, thank you, Brandon. And Greg?
Greg Ciaccio, head of original content and image capture for IMAX. So basically in charge of the film group and film for IMAX group, anything that's shot on 8K or shot on our film format, making sure we preserve the integrity of the images, scanning over, it's 13.5K actually is the setting on the director, but when you actually do the math and get all 5 perf images stacked, you're closer to 17K. And then delivering to the VFX houses in 8K or less, but generally 8K, and then preparing for an eventual IMAX home video release on various platforms for our IMAX enhanced group. So I also support the enhanced group.
Thank you. And Mike?
Yeah, hi, Mike Kobb. I'm the Principal Engineer for User Experience at Kaleidescape. So I wear a couple of hats. One is I'm a member of our user experience team, so I work on designing all of our interfaces, whether it's the interface on the player or our mobile applications or web store. And then I also have a development role, so I am actually a developer working on our mobile applications. We have mobile applications for iOS and Android that allow you to control Kaleidescape player and also shop in our movie store and buy content, and so I am responsible for those applications as well.
Thank you for that. And so one of the things I want to ask, first of all, because what we saw is a very amazing, a very immersive viewing experience of 8K content. So I'd like to hear, and I'm sure the audience would like to hear, what's your take? What did you feel about being able to view that amazing 8K content in this theater? Brandon.
Don't do it from the front row. Well, we've had the luxury at Colorfront to kind of be in this theater and a similar one down the hall from here, with actually driving it with the transcoder for a couple years now, and so seeing the material in it is amazing. It's one of those things that you kind of start to see some of the flaws as well. So the earlier people can see it, it might help. Obviously, you all notice the grain. It's a lot more prevalent. In some cases, it's less. But I think it's the next step forward in what we're all here to do, make movies. Whether it's to deliver IMAX and or to the home. It's only getting better, and the reality is the mix of those two is coming closer together. So the more we can do to put people in the seats is a big thing for the industry. So I think it's a great step forward.
That was exciting stuff. You obviously seen it a lot through the transcoder work that you've done in this theater and the other theater, but being able to see some of these clips for the first time was pretty amazing. What's your take on that, Greg?
So I come from a unique perspective, and when you see like the Odyssey, for those of you who got your tickets, or if you saw Oppenheimer on film, that is a direct print, a contact print off of the original cut negative. There is no IPIN involved. When you see that, you really aren't sure why you love it. It's just very immersive. We don't have that in the digital world. This is one of a unicorn of a screen. And when you have that density, George and others, when we were back at the Pacific Theater counting pixels from X row, row heights away, we're way beyond there, right? It's not a matter of can you count the screen door or the lines. It's when it gets so dense and the MTF is high and the contrast is high and the color is high. What does it do to you as a viewer? It transcends you and it brings you. It's very immersive, and I think we have that in film. We need more of this.
Who wants Greg's job? I know you're able to see some amazing things that on your side, at the studio side, and early on in production, never quite make it to the home, but you definitely see some amazing work. Mike, what did you think about today?
Well, this was our first opportunity to see content on this screen here. I think in a home environment, one of the high standard displays that someone might have would be an OLED, and people love those because they have the total black, which makes all of the colors and everything, all the proportions of the image really stand out against that true black background. And that's something that's really remarkable about this screen as well. As the Onyx is well named, I think, being able to see some of that content, like that last clip that we saw with the sparks against that otherwise dark background, or the very first clip, the STEM2 clip with all of the graphics in that dark cave environment. I think it has a tremendous impact, and the true black combined with something that is not always the case with an OLED in the house, which is very high brightness as well. That contrast I thought really looked terrific.
And to Brandon's point, it was very bright, right?
Very. Don't watch anything in here at 1,000.
PowerPoint slides, black background, white text.
Note to self for next time. Yeah, for sure. And so, Greg, you talked a little bit about high resolution, and obviously in the theaters that the IMAX theaters, giant screens, consumers really wanting these more highly immersive experiences. Talk a little bit about how that demand for higher resolution experiences in the theaters is driving for higher resolution productions, higher resolution scans. Maybe you could touch a little bit on that.
With respect to the home downstream, or just in general?
Just in general.
Yeah, well, I mean, for us, when we're making or posting a film, we want to go out to 15 per 65 and then ultimately 70 prints. So the higher the better, and this is why we're scanning at high resolutions. For those of you who don't know, the Laser Graphics Director scans in 3 5-perf sections that are 13.5K wide. So flip that on its side, now you're 13.5K tall, right? That would be your 143 or 137 wide. It then stitches them together and then outputs anything from that. So we kind of have a digital own egg, so to speak, and we deliver in 8K for those who ask for it. No one's asked for anything higher than 8K yet, and we have done 4K as well. So they want that because when they do their composites and they ultimately film out, and Photocam is a great partner of ours. They're Kodak, Photocam, and us. Without that three-legged chair, we would not survive in the business. So they do some fantastic work, and we want to make sure that that all of that meat on the egg ends up on the film eventually.
Yeah, and so with that on the theatrical side, what has that done for IMAX's vision around the future of home entertainment?
Well, so we do have an IMAX enhanced offering. Those of you who have larger TVs in 65, right? 85 is the new 75, which was the new 65, right? So we've got these larger TVs in our homes, and back in the old days of 5 times screen height, 2 times screen height, that's all gone out the window, right? We're not moving our chairs any further back. We're just getting bigger TVs. And so, with that, of course, we're talking about, unlike these products here, which are fixed pixel, we've got these TVs that now you need a little more density. And so, I personally have an 8K set at home, Samsung. It looks amazing. I can sit much closer to it before and have an IMAX-esque experience. It's not going to prevent people from going to the IMAX theater. We know that, but why not have the best possible exhibition in your home?
No, that's great. And talking a bit about the home, Mike, with the Kaleidescape, line of products, the Strato K, how do you see, home entertainment expanding around, these highly immersive viewing experiences, especially now that you've got, the device able to support 8K as screens are getting larger and consumers are demanding larger screens based on the entertainment experiences they're getting out there in large IMAX theaters, over there in places like Cosm, places like Sphere?
Yeah, I think that's really kind of well said. The one of the things that we've seen certainly in recent years, really, I think beginning with the first Christopher Nolan Batman movie and then moving on from there, are these films that have been shot with IMAX cameras. Initially, sort of with that first Batman movie, a handful of scenes, and now the Odyssey entirely shot in IMAX. So that's driving people who are either installing or considering updating their home theaters to factor in. It used to be that people were looking for very wide screens, and now we're getting these movies that have a very important component where they're much taller. If you think about Top Gun Maverick, all the flying scenes in that movie are full frame, and so that's tending towards making people invest more in these larger screens. I guess basically 1:7:8 aspect ratio screens, so they get the full height of the projector, and sitting closer to them. And so this is I think an area where we've already seen a lot of interest from people with our 4K products. Now as we move into an 8K product, that screen, if you're sitting close to it, really calls for the highest resolution that you can get. And so that's why we're quite excited to be pairing up something like Strato K with these theaters that people are beginning to install in their homes. And there are people who are installing these things too, smaller, but that again is something the highest resolution you can get is well paired with that.
Yeah, and I know Kaleidescape works very closely with the custom home integrators, events like CEDIA where you're working and demonstrating some of the most amazing home theater experiences. And with your relationship, with Kaleidescape's relationship with these home integrators, what are some of the trends that you are seeing and hearing from the integrators as consumers are demanding more immersive home entertainment experiences?
Yeah, I think it's related to that, the choice of screen again. As more content is being shot in these very tall aspect ratios, people want to be able to view that at home. They don't want it shrunk down to the middle of the screen, and so we're seeing more people go with a taller aspect ratio screen. With masking, if you wanted to watch a regular CinemaScope film that was not shot with the large format cameras. But providing for that, and I think at this point an installer who is doing a good job for their client is going to be recommending a screen that has that flexibility, that can do the tall aspect ratios and show that full IMAX frame, or as close as we can get in a home video format to a full IMAX frame.
And so as we see screens getting larger, consumers going with the larger displays, the larger projectors with the capabilities of higher resolutions, and you've got some of the consumers, as you said, purchasing LED walls like this. And as you've seen, we've got some 8K content that's been developed. We've got more 8K content coming. And so to you, Brandon, how important is it that the industry stay ahead of the curve and be prepared for the advancement of higher resolution content, whether it's around SMPTE, IMF, 8K, or the capabilities that the transcoder does? What do you think the industry needs to do to stay ahead of the curve in preparation for this?
Buy more storage while it's affordable. No, I think it's part of the thing that I don't think the specification without the background to physically maintain it is just a piece of paper. It doesn't mean anything, right? We have a spec, but the industry needs to take hold of it, use it, and when it comes to the hardware side, it's not a compression problem. That's kind of been solved. I think the biggest thing we're at now is the hardware side, and you kind of have to be ready for it. You talk about the 8K and 12K cameras that say Phil shoots on, and then you get into the immersive cameras that are now available, and they're shooting. A 1 hour shot is 7.5 terabytes. It's a different world that we're all living in, and as that scales, things like IMF, obviously when you go to archive it, if you prepare and you master and you finish for the biggest thing possible, like I said earlier, then the downstream things, if you're delivering to someone who has 2K, they can have 2K. If you deliver to someone who can afford one of these and put it in their house and has a house this big, they can have, with the Strato K, they can also do 8K, right? So you allow that, but a lot of the infrastructure has to be kind of ready for it. But it's not too much of a compute problem. It's mainly in our mind, it's a storage problem is the biggest thing that we're kind of gaining to. And obviously with IMF and as a format, it's obviously there's the uncompressed version of it, but there's also compressed versions of it. So there's different ways you can do it. But for that's the biggest thing. Is otherwise it's just a piece of paper. We can come up with specs all day, but we need people to buy into it and actually use it and deliver it, and that's the biggest thing.
And we know that there was a lot of big players involved in the development and update of the IMAX specification. Talk to us a little bit, give us some details about what were some of the challenges you had with all of the members and some of the successes you had in updating the IMAX specification to support 8K.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing, when I spoke to my developer about it, because I don't code. Well, I guess we all code now, but I don't. But when it comes into doing it, when I was talking to Peter and obviously working with Warner Brothers and the guys on the IMF team and then the Photon team, there's a lot of pieces to it, right? Because I can encode it, I can make the file sizes, but we just finalized 4 fixes in Photon on Friday, so we could make DCPs for this week. Not for this, but for something else in 8K. And so one of the things that we ran into was since it's 4 times the size of say 4K, is you run into RAM allocation issues when you're going to encode it, right? So you're threading, and those threads get bigger, and then there's 4 times as many of them. So then you have to manage the CPU processing on it. So you still need a pretty beefy system to handle it. GPU and everything involved, and obviously those machines are way more expensive now than they were yesterday. But the idea being, I think that was the biggest thing we ran into, that anybody who's going to integrate it needs to be aware of is it is 4 times the data, it is 4 times the size. You're going to run into threading things, and that's where something like high throughput J2K, when that was introduced, one of the great things about it is the throughput is 10 times faster. Right, and you're not losing any quality, so that's one of the best things about it. You have to deal with some other issues when integrating that codec, but it's very powerful and allows to the end user, or at least our end users, not the commercial end users, but our end users, to be able to deliver it. So that was some of the big pain points that we ran into. But working as a community, because it is IMF, it is supposed to be interoperable, dealing with whether it's me or it's Resolve or it's MTI. So I saw Brian earlier tonight. We have to all play together with these specifications, and I think that's one of the fun things about it, is it changes, and so we like doing really hard things, and this was hard at first, and now that it's kind of being adopted, it should be relatively easy.
Yeah, new technology is always a challenge. Getting it figured out, getting organizations to work together to figure out, coming up with a very defined, specific rules and regulations, and the finalized specification around it is key, so that others can use it and it can become very interoperable. And I know that there was some interoperability testing you guys were involved in quite a bit around that as well.
Yeah, we did that with the team. There's a whole lot of people that do it. It's not just us. I think we're the first ones to do the 8K and have it said and done and ready to rock and roll again, whether it's IMF or for the 8K DCP deliverables. It's one of those things that working with Warner has been fantastic, a big promoter of it over the years. They've been fantastic getting us content, breaking things, and that's part of the fun is the breaking of it. Like, hey, you gave me it's sitting there in real time, you got a computer, I've got a computer, or someone's got a computer, and it breaks, and then I'm able to check it and go, yeah, it's broken, and this is why it's broken. Then I give them a package, and they go, oh, yours is working, but it's broken in this way. And so that instant feedback, whether it's about tiling or any one of the million things that can go potentially wrong, in that part of the fun is the what they call plug fests, and we do them 2 to 3 times a year depending on what's going on. So I encourage anybody to get involved, whether you're a manufacturer or not. Being able to play them back or read them or encode them, it definitely helps make sure everybody's on the same page to get everything done.
No, absolutely. All about collaboration, working together, and interoperability to make sure that what you did is actually working. And talking about specifications, Mike, the 8K Association developed a set-top box specification around specific performance requirements to define what is a high-performance, 8K set-top box, 8K playback device. And you were very involved in helping with the development of those specifications. Talk to us a little bit about, what you think is important around having technical specifications related to 8K.
Yeah, well, I would just echo a lot of what Brandon already said. This is it's a critical element. I think it's a critical element for 2 different audiences. As a manufacturer, you want to know when you are putting out a product that your product will be able to interoperate with the sorts of products that you need to interoperate with. For us, that would, generally speaking, be displays, AV receivers in some cases. So you want to be sure that you're going to play nice. We go to Plugfests as well. We have our own flavor of Plugfest that we go to. So that there's that aspect of it, but there's also then the consumer aspect of it. I mean, there's a reason the 8K Association logo is pretty, and it's because this is to be consumer-facing piece of branding as well, so that when someone goes to buy an 8K display and an 8K player, they can have some confidence as they're standing there in the retailer to say that these things are going to play nice together. They're going to work well. And so, this is why we were very interested in participating in the 8K Association, in working on this specification for distribution devices, because, we think it's obviously in our best interest, and it's in everybody's best interest to be able to reliably deliver and present this content without, people running into compatibility headaches and all of the sorts of stuff that, just make something that should be fun and enjoyable into a headache.
No, and it's great to see that. I mean, it's been a long time coming. There's been discussions about, the ecosystem. Where's the content? Where's the player? Today, you had the opportunity to see firsthand, the content is there. You got to see firsthand the player where the content was actually being played back, by the Kaleidescape Strato-K player. And I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the features you touched on, Mike. You talked about the 4K cinematic. If you could talk to, us a little bit about about what was the motivation and what it's actually providing to the consumer, so that we're all aware.
Sure. I think one of the it's been touched on here already. One of the challenges with 8K right now is that there is content. There's been content mastered in 8K, scanned in 8K. Some content like these last features that were actually filmed and finished in 8K, but it's a relatively small set of content. And there's been a chicken and egg problem where content people who are producing content, understandably, are reluctant to make the investment in delivering that content until there's some way to play it. And conversely, there are someone who, like us, who makes a player might be reluctant to deliver a player with no content to play on it. So we've found a little bit of a sort of a jujitsu move that we're able to do to help break that logjam, which is we've shipped a player that can play 8K native content, but there's also the ability to play this new format that we've developed called 4K Cinematic, which is only playable on Strato-K, but it makes existing 4K displays and the experience of watching 4K movies, they look better. We deliver substantially higher bitrate, which we were able to play with the hardware that's in Strato-K that we couldn't play in previous players. And I think also very importantly, when we get a mezzanine file from a studio, they're typically either 444 color, per pixel color, or often 422 half resolution color. But home formats until now have been 420. They've been a quarter resolution color. So when you're looking at something on a big screen, if you can deliver that at even at 4K, but at full resolution color, it presents a more exciting, a more realistic, more immersive and engaging image. And so it gives people a reason to want a Strato-K today. We're shipping the player today. We have hundreds of movies ready to go. And anyone who owns one of our systems today and owns 4K titles as they purchased from our store can download the 4K cinematic version immediately at no extra charge. And all of our future 4K work will be, adding to 4K cinematic as well as backward compatible formats for the older players. So that gives people a reason to want and a real benefit to have this 8K capable player. And then as 8K content that I should say, we do have some 8K content. We've licensed some 8K content that will be available for the player. We're working to license more. So someone who has an 8K display and buys a Strato-K today will be able to enjoy that in full-blown 8K. But it gives the people who maybe have 4K today, that's their first step. They can get a player, they can really enjoy the 4K content, and then as they move forward, upgrade to an 8K display. Probably that'll be a motivating factor for them. And then they have everything that they need to enjoy full 4K when it becomes available.
So you've got the studios providing you with these extremely high-resolution packages, IMF packages, it's one of them. They're BT 2020, which is your color space, but as part of that, they're typically 444, which by the time it gets to most devices, it's 420, so you don't have the full color range, whereas now with the 4K Cinematic, you can take full advantage of that and reproduce that in the best possible way, truly preserving that creative intent, but not just from the color space perspective, going 444, but understand you can also incorporate extremely high bit rates on the content.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're encoding at basically an 8K comparable bit rate on these, or somewhat less. It depends whether it's 444 or 420, what we need to do in terms of the encoding. But yeah, if you pop on our Kaleidescape movie store and take a look at a movie that's available in 4K Cinematic, you can look at the file sizes, and a 4K movie might be 95 gigabytes, something like that, and a 4K Cinematic is 130, 135 gigabyte file. So it gives you some idea. It's about 50% higher bit rate.
Those are some serious bit rates there.
Yeah, talk about buy more storage. Yeah.
Yeah, and as part of that, it's great that you have this player that has 8K support. And while we were waiting for more and more 8K content to be produced, to be remastered, you got this 4K cinematic. As part of the work for 8K, Greg, I want to touch with you a little bit, and you talked quite a bit about, the mastering process and the importance of scanning at higher than 8K resolutions. You talked about laser graphics. If you could talk a little bit more about, from an IMAX perspective, why do you feel it is important to scan at 8K and higher resolutions, especially when you're talking about some of your larger print films?
Yes, I brought visual aids. So if you look at the size of, I know it's hard to see from way back there, but this is a 1570 print. You can see the 35 version on your right? So it's not pixels, obviously, it's photochemical. But some have said that, of course, if if you've got high enough MTF throughout the whole chain, that would be about 18K resolution. So we're not scanning it at 8. We're not delivering at 18K yet. We owe this a service. We have to scan this at a high resolution. We do lots of tests. Before we bought the laser graphics, we were looking at another one. But to be honest, there is no other solution out there. The Northlight 65, which we have, it's one of one in the world, 24 years old this year. I mean, when you think of what we were doing 24 years ago, 12 and a half seconds per frame, so really slow compared to the laser graphics, about 1 second a frame now. But we have to do that if we're going to come close to capturing this, which we still haven't, right, in digital. When you see that print up there, you're seeing, for the highly technical here, you're not seeing 18K onto the print, right? But it's very close. When you get that emotional feeling again, when you walk out and you go, oh my God, what did I just see? You're not going to know why necessarily, but if we can keep that resolution high and scan even higher, and then of course you got the film outside too, right? They're not filming out at 18K because there is no recorder that I know of that will do that. But that's where we need to get to, right? We need to get to the point where we can actually preserve this throughout the whole entire life cycle of this.
So as a result of this, you're going to help me start the 18K Association?
That might be a hell of a ramp up.
And so, Mike, you hear all of this talk about 8K restoration. Kaleidescape has a large library of new release titles, of classic titles. How important is all of this 8K restoration work to Kaleidescape?
Well, I think it's wonderful. I mean, if you look at a film like 2001, that's that having that original print, or the original negatives, which were captured so much information, and being able to restore that and return it to a beautiful format that people can watch and enjoy in the home. I think it's really fantastic. There was another film that was released a few years ago that was a documentary about Apollo 11, and that was shot on 65 millimeter film, not running sideways, but still, beautiful footage, and they did a nice restoration on that film. We have it on our store, and no one has seen that film look that good since, maybe ever, but certainly since the late 60s. So I think it brings back some great art that people can enjoy today, and so yeah, I think having that restoration, having that beautiful content available, in addition, of course, to all of the things that are being created new today, but this is one of the beautiful things about things that were shot on film, is if the film has been well preserved, you can go back to it and recover something that looks as good as if it was filmed yesterday, if not better.
Yeah, and we've heard, as mentioned in some recent discussions, obviously IMAX. Greg, you talked about the work you're doing in extremely high resolution scanning. Warner Brothers has mentioned in several panels where they have over 20 titles scanned in 8K. More recently, I talked earlier about the titles 7 and Fight Club, where David Fincher has decided that he wanted the titles scanned in 8K, done the cleanup in 8K, done all the color correction in 8K, so they have a fully ready 8K master. So this is really demonstrating, little by little, the move and the abilities within the industry to start to create some of those 8K masters, and so Brandon, as part of that, how can the SMPTE IMF, update to 8K and the transcoder tool help the industry to support that?
I think the big thing, at least for us, from our standpoint, is it will evolve. 8K won't be the end point. It's kind of where we're at now. 4 years ago it was 4K, and now it's 8K, and obviously that will continue to grow at some point. Maybe it'll stop. But for us, it's supporting the filmmakers from the beginning, to the end. When you look at the cameras that are coming out now, the lenses are being able to resolute on the sensor correctly. All those things come into play. So then I think as the younger filmmakers are coming up, their default is an 8K digital camera, right? That's what they're used to, and so that's going to become a lot easier to work with. And for us, from our standpoint, it's always kind of staying ahead of the curve, as much as we possibly can, and working with SMPTE and the IMF group to make sure that we're ready for what a camera manufacturer might make, what say Kaleidescape might need down the road, or even just the IMF standard delivering to one of the many streaming services. It's all kind of evolving, and so our goal is always to kind of have a finger on the pulse for 6 to 8 months from now and beyond, and start right from the beginning all the way through the end.
And at the end of the day, what is this all? Why is this all being done? It's really to deliver to the consumers the type of experience they want. And we're seeing that consumers more and more are wanting more immersive experiences. They're seeing going into events like, the Sphere, like Cosm. Display sizes are getting bigger and more affordable. You can walk into a Costco and for under $1,000 get a 100-inch or larger television. You can get projectors with extremely large screens, 120 inches and larger. And so what role, to you, Mike, do you feel that 8K can help promote these larger screens, these more immersive viewing experiences for the consumer homes?
Yeah, I mean, I think Greg, you said something earlier, which is that that even when people are watching IMAX content at home, it's not stopping them from going to the IMAX cinemas. With probably a handful of exceptions, no one's putting a screen like this in at home, so they're going to go to the theater to see that experience. But when it's not there anymore, the people want to still relive that and have as close as they can get to that experience at home. And so I think, having that content available, having the super high quality source and the ability to deliver it faithfully is then it's going to drive that kind of the marketplace for people to invest in the larger screen or the projector. So that they can get as close to that great experience that they had in the commercial cinema at home and enjoy it again.
I will say that it won't stop people from going out to our IMAX theater, but it will stop me from going to a multiplex with a very small screen.
100%.
Of course, we got that from you, Greg, right?
Well, listen, we have, IMAX obviously is about theatrical presentation. We do have our IMAX Enhanced. It's on Disney Plus. We also have an Apple Vision Pro app. So if you have an Apple Vision Pro, I know it's not the kind of thing, you don't have 5 of them lying around. But we do have an IMAX app, and we do have a theater. We haven't yet released the V2 environment, but it's very accurate. And it's not only something that you can use as a consumer, but it's a B2B tool. So, when Jon Favreau was making Mandalorian and Grogu, he was actually visualizing the shots in the Vision Pro before they even rolled camera. So there's a lot of great applications for these tools out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then touching back on your IMAX Enhanced, I mean, obviously set up with a different platform, supporting the television, support through AVRs to really give that consumer the best possible experience and maintaining that creative intent.
And there's one thing we really didn't talk about much is up conversion. We
didn't, but obviously you have
I'm gonna
something
throw
you
it
want to
out
say
there.
about it.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, it's important. We've got, and I know that AI is the dirty two letters out there, right? And listen, it's just something it's enabling, right? It's not anything brand new. People have been using these techniques and visual effects tools for a while, but we got to think about this too. Is if you have something that's not native 8K, is there value to upconverting something that's 4K into 8K? I'm asking the questions.
People do. It's one of those things like I said, AI is the hot topic term, but we've been up-resing things with various curves and things for a long time, right? Whether analog or digital. So we get lots of requests, whether it's HD to 4K or 4K up into 8K. There's plenty of libraries. AI has some benefit in the sense of speeding things up. You can play around with things a little bit easier. I think that's a very valid point. There is a lot of content out there where they want to take advantage of having a higher resolution. So how do I don't have the budget, so how do I create that content, and not lose the train, but have the ability to do that. I always joke with the guys at Colorfront that we kind of live in a special world of like dealing with like really nice displays everywhere and like perfect pictures and the whole 9 yards, but like leave America, like you go to so many places and it's like they're still watching like 720p on a set-top box, but it's realistic. It's like it's a real thing that's still a deliverable, and obviously we lead the way. So like taking those markets into consideration as they start to come online, they might just skip right over the 1080 thing and be like, what's that? Let's just get right. Let's get all this stuff that's like beyond, because we're Hollywood. We make movies and all that other stuff, but there's billions of hours of content out there that is not us, and I think that we could, benefit from kind of everything doing it. And using an up mapper would allow other parts of the crazy infrastructure that is movies, television, TV, commercial, all that stuff, be able to take advantage of technology, with doing some type of up-res to it.
I mean, we really can't ignore that segment. Obviously, if you have 8K sources, use the 8K sources. But just like for those of you who know Pixelworks TrueCut Motion, which actually will make some nice, they'll either add motion blur or frame one. It's not the same as the TV doing it, right? So do you want to feed your 8K TV an HD signal that it's now 16x upconverting, or do you want to do it properly and show it on your server?
Yeah, I mean, I think TrueCut is a really good example. Actually, it is something that the filmmaker is involved with the process of it and gets to decide what that looks like. So I think if you're going to be doing up conversion, with the filmmaker involved in it, so that it preserves the intent of it, and they can get a better looking presentation of something that maybe they don't have the original assets in that resolution. They can't get them. They shot them on digital. It doesn't exist. They can't rescan the film. I think that that's completely appropriate. And as you said, then you have the control over it. So it's not some algorithm that some engineer somewhere, said, oh, this will work in about 90% of the cases pretty well.
Yeah, there's always been up conversion to try to fill the gap. Even like on broadcast, you're getting a lot of these, premium sporting events, 4K HDR, but they're actually shot in HD, up converted to 4K, but taking advantage of HDR like you're getting with some of the World Cup events. A lot of the initial 8K displays were set up to where they had these AI upscale capabilities while we were waiting for playback devices, while we were waiting for content. Now we have playback devices. Now we have content. And so, Mike, what was the motivation between Kaleidescape to be, the first 8K playback device in the industry?
Well, I mean, it's really kind of on brand for us. Our whole focus for many years has been to be the highest fidelity source in the home. We deliver, even when we were delivering 4K content, because that's what we could do, we were still encoding 4K at higher bit rates, unconstrained by, the capacity limits of a physical disk. So we could deliver a 110 gigabyte movie. Well, it's not fitting on even a what is it, BD 100. Obviously, it's gonna overflow it. So yeah, I think 8K is the natural next step for us. Being at the forefront of that, leading the quality story for home content. That's very much what what we have done and will continue to do is to produce these products that, you know, don't have some of the compromises that products that are maybe trying to hit a lower price point, et cetera, or have to make.
And so with that, you know, now that we're evolving and we're starting to see, you know, 8K making its way full end-to-end content playback device, what else do we feel that the entertainment industry, the technology providers can do to really help promote, you know, the advancement of 8K to make more devices and more content available? Maybe we'll start with you on that one, Greg.
We need a distributor to place an order with us, licensed content.
I think it's take the fear away that it's hard. Like, yes, it's not easy, but it's also like not impossible, right? At the last SMPTE event, which was is it too bright or what's too bright? Everyone's like, we can't do HDR dailies. I'm like, yes, you can. And so one of those things is like, we can stop being so fearful of it. Like, it's not as technically challenging, you know, because the standards exist, because we work as a community to figure things out. You know, by the time, you know, it really gets out there, I hear a lot of kind of pushback, like, oh, it's so hard to do it. It's like, how long have we been doing 8K, Phil? Like a decade? Like, it's not, you know, it's, you know, and it's only going to get bigger, right? And like, again, like storage, compute, but all that's kind of like beyond, like, caught up and like blown right past us, and now it's too expensive. But you know, the hardware is there that we can do this and make it, you know, a lot, you know, at least from the digital side, you know, not as difficult as it first might seem.
And what's your take on that, Mike?
Well, I think, you know, going back to something I said earlier, there has been a real chicken and egg problem, and you know, with the fact now that we have both displays available that can display 8K, and now a player that can play 8K, you know, it opens the door now. Someone who has content and is interested in distributing in 8K, they know that there's a destination for it, and that there can be an audience for it. That they're not just shouting into the void, you know. So that I think, you know, the message really there is like, you know, it's the water's fine. Come on in.
And so it has been quite a bit of the chicken and the egg situation. And we've had that with every technology. We've had that with DVD. We had that with Blu-ray. We've had that with 4K Blu-ray. And, you know, now we've got that here. So technology always seems to evolve, always seems to find a way. As you said, you know, it's a lot of work at first to get it going, but eventually we all get there together.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, obviously there's, you know, SDR, HDR, all the different things. You know, I think if we start off, you know, we've been preaching single master workflow for the HDR side of things for a long time, and there's all the different deliverables. And, you know, if you start small, can you go up? Yes, you know, like we have ways to do that. You know, but when it comes to, you know, the 8K right now, if you just start mastering and archiving at that, I can deliver 4K, I can deliver 2K, I can deliver whatever is required below that. And if we all kind of look at that as a kind of an ecosystem, where we're at now is 8K. Okay, yes, that will change. But like right now, we have the standards, we have the ability to be, you know, at 8K, do SDR, HDR, XYZ, do whatever you want. The color space is independent completely. I think that, you know, if we look at it from that perspective, we're like, let's go with the biggest container we got, and then everything else can be delivered, you know, for you know, down, you know, from that is another way to kind of look at the future and the solutions to working everything out.
Indeed. And talking about the future, you know, having this conversation, and if this was 5 years from now, you know, what would we be talking about? What would you think we'd be in regards to premium large format, you know, immersive home entertainment experiences in 5 years? What do you think we'll be? Let's start with you, Mike.
Well, I mean, I think it's going to continue on the trajectory that it has been on, and hopefully accelerate a bit. You know, now that I think there's been a lot of movement on pricing on the display side of things, and so it's possible to get bigger, more immersive displays at home, and you know, as we get the content and can load them onto our 8K player, I think that will hopefully drive even faster adoption and broader adoption of that kind of high resolution, high quality immersive ecosystem.
And to you, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. You know, I think you have to show it to people. You know, and that's the problem. We're getting to that kind of diminishing returns thing where if you really care, you care. And if you had, let's say, if you walked into your local Magnolia and you actually had your server set up with a 110-inch TV and you've got the couch, you know, where it would be today, if you show them that the quality is much higher, you have essentially what's way better than an Ultra Blu-ray without the package media issue, right?
Correct.
So that, you know, you just have to, you know, it's education, and you've got to show them.
That's something we've been saying, you know, that we've been preaching to our dealers for a long time. Is, you know, it really is. It's not something you read on a page. It's something that you see and experience, and you have that sort of visceral reaction to it, and then, you know, then people know they want it.
Yeah, and so Brandon, if we were having this conversation 5 years from now, where do you think we'd be around, you know, immersive home entertainment?
We're all just gonna be wearing headsets, right? No. I think it's, to Mike Greg's point, it's exactly that. I think it's you really have to show it to people 5 years from now. If you talk to us 5 years ago about 4K, we're still in 4K. It's more adopted. You kind of can't get anything that's not a 4K display. I think it'll become more ubiquitous that 8K is there, and then as more people start to see it. I think that's where it really kind of stands. It's going to just continue to evolve, and then 5 years from now, we'll be sitting in this theater talking about 16K and where we're going from there, and at what point does it stop? But, I think that's the truth of where it is you really got to show it to people. Like when you see this, it kind of changes the way you look at it. Like, oh, okay, cool. That is, really awesome.
Now, I think it's very exciting from my perspective. It's great to see that, as, the organizations, members work together to try to develop a technology that we can see its success. Somebody was saying earlier, every technology starts with somebody pushing a rock up a hill, and eventually there's others who help, and you get to the top of that hill, and then it becomes a success. So it's really, really great to see that. The 8K ecosystem is evolving, and as a part of that, sometimes new things pop up. For example, the 4K cinematic mode that you guys had developed. Who would have thought that? Hey, we're going to have a format that supports 444 color space from a playback perspective to the consumer home, something that you don't usually get to see unless you're in a post house. I mean, you have the Sony X300 at home, right? So you could see this high quality content every day, right? I don't think so.
Well, I think one of the things too, see a movie in here because there's 64 speakers. And we all know it's only 20% of the movie. I'm totally kidding. Sorry, sound guys. No, it's amazing when you hear it. That's a big portion of it, right? So I can go see really beautiful pictures, but I don't want to shy away. I know this is about 8K resolution, but the sound and with spatial audio and all those things that are coming, or around already. Seeing something in here when it's in its full effect, it's pretty amazing. So that's one of the things I think also for home is a big portion of it. There's no speakers behind this thing. It's all in front, and so it's pretty impressive what you guys end up seeing and hearing in here.
Yeah, it is definitely a pretty impressive theater from both the video side and the audio side. Mike, you had a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. That's another example of the people have to experience it thing. We are unique, I guess, in terms of electronic delivered media, in that we do deliver lossless audio. We do lossless multi-channel and spatial audio, comparable to what you get on a 4K Blu-ray disc, and people can hear that difference. They really can. If you play them that versus the same movie streaming, for example, it's an immediate. People immediately hear that difference, and so that's another example of really wanting to experience something, and then again, as I said before, then they know they want it.
No, absolutely. And as we wrap up today's events, I want to see if any of you have any last words in regards to immersive home entertainment, new technologies coming out to the home, large screens. Any last words, Brandon?
I think I said a lot, but no, I think it's ever evolving. We've been talking about that a lot, and obviously the immersive experiences, whether it's Sphere or Cosm or just a really big screening your thing, or you put the headset on, the AVP, don't call it a headset, it's a spatial computer. When you put it on, it's amazing. It honestly is absolutely incredible what you see in there. I'm not going to wear it for like 15 hours, but it is amazing. And that's something that we as filmmakers in variety of capacities need to also be aware of. It's not going to just be big screens, not forever. Hopefully we're not going to go Ready Player One too soon. But the idea is that's something to also prepare for, is that portion of the filmmaker and, the younger generations that might become more normal for them. So it's also something to be ready for.
And your thoughts, Greg? Any last words?
Not much more than what we said already. It's these things are less tangible and more emotional, and you feel them more. And it's not the kind of thing you're going to walk up and go, huh? Yeah, I can see it, or I can't see it. Sit down, turn the lights down, turn the sound up, look at it, be immersed, and you'll come away with an emotional experience.
Absolutely. And to you, Mike?
I 100% agree with what you said. That's the business we're in. Is we want to deliver to people a content experience that makes them have that emotional reaction, that makes them feel something. It's a contribution to them. So.
No, absolutely. Well, I would like to thank you all for joining us for today's event. Afterwards, if any of you have questions, I urge you to please come up and speak to them directly. So Brandon, Greg, Mike, I appreciate you being here on behalf of SMPTE, on behalf of the 8K Association. We want to thank you all for your time and joining us today. And I also want to send out a special thanks to my co-producer, Linda Rosner, to Rafiq, Brian Gaffney, Culver City Theater's Director of Programming and Events, Tom Zhao, SMPTE's Head of Standards and Video Specialist, Raymond, and to also Amazon MGM Studios for allowing us to use this facility. So thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.